Okay, all right, so we're going to talk about active listening. And active listening is kind of a foundation for relationship building, for really communicating to the person who's speaking that you are hearing what they're saying, or at least trying to hear what they're saying. So we have this umbrella of active listening that to visualize a little bit kind of what's involved with it. So we've got this double-ended continuum that's underneath the umbrella, and it's double-ended because I want to indicate visually that you're going back and forth along that continuum. It's not a stair-step skill. It's not like math where you have to know how to count before you can know how to add, before you can know how to multiply. But it's going back and forth along the continuum. So it involves all those components. And the first component is passive listening. And that's where you do what you're doing. Eye contact, head nods, things like uh-huh. So you are trying to non-verbally give non-verbal indicators that you are really trying to track and understand what the other person is saying. And that actually is happening throughout. That's really, in some ways, should be part of the umbrella. I mean, the umbrella itself, because you're doing that as you are throughout the whole process. Then the next component is parroting, and that is where you parrot back the words that the other person has said. And you're doing that in order to let them know at least that you've heard their words correctly. And so it's kind of a check back that you've heard them correctly, and it's also an invitation to speak more. And the way it's an invitation to speak more is by you make a statement grammatical statement with a question in your voice. So if I say, oh my goodness, I'm so tired right now, a parroting response would be, oh, so you're really tired right now. And so there's a little bit of an uplift. It's kind of like the Canadian uplift. It's a beautiful day out, eh? And what that is doing is inviting more interaction. And so you're giving a statement with a question in your voice, and for the parroting, you're repeating back the words. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. The next component is paraphrasing, and that is where you are summarizing the content of what the other person has said. So again, you're wanting to let the other person know that you're hearing and that you're trying to understand what they're saying. So if I say, oh my goodness, I'm so tired, and I think, oh, I'm going back to work on Monday, and I've got this living room full of books on the floor that I'm trying to organize, and then we might have people over tomorrow, and how in the world am I ever going to get it done? A paraphrase of that could be, oh, so you're feeling really tired, and you really want to get some stuff done before you go back to work. And so you've paraphrased that, you're doing a check-in to see if you've heard me accurately, and that's an invitation for me to respond to that. And there's no right or wrong answer in how you're doing this. Your goal is to keep the conversation going and to continue to elicit more information in order to continue to build the relationship, potentially to do problem solving if that might be part of what is called for in that situation. So and so if you paraphrase that way, I could say, I think I could get it all done if I have a nap today, and that'll actually spur me on. Or I could say, I'm not really very tired. I think I just I look at that and don't even know where to start. And so then that can move you into the reflective listening, which is where you are trying to identify what might be the underlying emotion that the person is experiencing or expressing. So in that example, it could be, you could build on that and you could say, oh, so it sounds like you're feeling a little overwhelmed with what you have going today. And again, I could say, oh yeah, I am. I don't even know where to start. And, or I could say, no, I just have to start. Once I start, I'll be fine. But again, you're just trying to identify and put into words for me what I might be feeling or experiencing. And so let me go over some goals, some more goals of the active listening, because that might help. So build a relationship. You guys can throw things out also, because some of you have heard this before. Well, let me say this. So one of the beautiful parts about the reflective listening, I think it's just amazing, because what it does is something that's called right brain connection. So we kind of, simplistically speaking, we have two parts of our brain. We have the left brain and we have the right brain. Right brain is where we process memories and emotions. And left brain is all the L's. Left, linear, logic, language, lists. There might be some more L's in this. That only works in English, because I'm sure those are different words in other languages. But for us, the left brain is more the logical. And so one thing that happens a lot of times is when we see someone in distress, to whatever degree, we're not emotionally caught up in it. And so we can move pretty quickly into the left brain. And we've got all these great ideas for how they could respond. Well, if you've ever been the person on the speaking end, and someone comes along and is giving you all these ideas, but you're still caught up in the emotion piece of it, what are you going to do with all those wonderful ideas that they have? You're going to throw them out, or you're going to disregard them. Yeah. Because you're not ready to hear them. Yeah. And so the reflective listening actually connects at that right brain level. So you're identifying, you're addressing what might be happening for the other person emotionally, and then when we have this right brain connection, we're better able to de-escalate if we've been kind of escalated in our emotions. And then we're better able to make the bridge over into the left brain. But it could take quite a while in some situations. The example I just gave was really minor, and that wouldn't take very long. But if you had come to me, if I was saying, oh my goodness, I've got all this stuff to do, if you said, well, Sandy, here's what you need to do. You need to write a list, and you need to go home and whatever, my eyes would glaze over, because I would think, you don't know what's happening here. So, but if you were saying, oh, wow, it looks like you got your plate full today, and that's not very exciting to you, well, then I think, oh, you're giving me a little sympathy, and you're meeting me where I am. And then I might be better able to move into problem solving. And I would be more likely to come up with my own ideas and say, well, actually, if I just go home and move those books onto the shelves that we cleared off, then I think I could see what I'm doing, and then that'll clear up the floor, and then that space will feel better. And if I'm coming up with the idea, what do you think the buy-in will be? More or less? Yeah, exactly. Because we tend to like our own ideas better than other people's. So that's another element of that. That's why I think that the reflective piece of this, although all of it, is what makes it so powerful. Comments or questions? No?
Hard habit to break.
To ask, that's okay. So asking questions, I didn't say that very well. You didn't just say that, but that's a big habit that people have. And I would say this, and then whoever was going to say something, this is really, I'm saying do not ask questions. Even though you have a question in your voice, don't ask questions. And that's because questions can be a door closer. And what they're doing is they're directing what's where you want the conversation to go, versus really allowing the person who's speaking to be kind of directing it, or you're going with their flow, and so you're going to be more likely to be following after what really is happening. So with that example, and if you said, well, what do you need to do today, or why don't you want to clean the floor, then I might not have an answer for you, or it might be that if it's really that I'm so very tired, but we're talking about how to pick up those books off the floor, then we've missed where I am. And that's a really light example. That's not like it's not like really a deep emotional something that's happening for someone. But and it is hard to break, especially because in our culture, we ask questions and we tend to be more resolution driven. All right, was somebody going to say something earlier?
I was going to ask,
yeah.
is reflective listening like looking in a mirror? Like you mirror someone to have the empathy? Like if I'm out next to the water, thinking or whatnot, and I look in the water, you see your own reflection. Is that what
that's
reflective
a
is?
great question, because what it sparks is a point that I think is really important. You are, to some degree, you are mirroring back. You're mirroring back kind of in some ways, kind of the intensity of what's happening for the other person. If they're yelling, you don't have to yell back. But if they're saying, I am so sick of all this and it's horrible and I can't even stand it, if you say, oh, you're a little bit upset, then you're not really accurately mirroring or reflecting. But if you say, wow, this is so important to you and it is really significant for you, then you are mirroring back. Well, basically, you're trying to mirror back in words and to kind of tone what is happening for the other person. Because a lot of times, people, when you're in your right brain and your emotions are high, where was language? In the left brain. So it's more difficult to put into words what's going on for you. So if someone else is doing that for you and with you, then it's like, oh, there's this sense of relief, like, oh, you get it. And so that's the reflective part. But that's, yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Is it okay to take what I think of as a side trip before mirroring, to say, I'm tempted to say something sympathetic like, yes, some days are really hard, or something to affirm what they're feeling,
Yeah.
and how hard it is, before saying, and blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah, that is great. Yes, you can empathize. What you have to guard against is saying, wow, I'd feel overwhelmed in this also.
No.
Because then you're bringing it back to yourself.
Oh.
But what you said was actually kind of mirroring what might be happening for them. Like, wow, this is really hard. And so you're keeping the focus on the other person. Yeah, no, that's good. Okay,
Just
yes.
real quick on that, you
Yeah.
said, wow, this was really hard for you, instead of like, wow, yeah, that is lame, right? Like, instead of acknowledging that the situation really is bad,
Yeah.
you're saying, wow, you should instead say, wow, that's really hard for you.
Yeah.
Rather than, are you kind of saying, don't acknowledge that the situation is so bad, but rather just say, I'm sorry, that's so bad for you.
No, I would not say,
Okay.
I'm sorry that's so bad for you, because
Okay.
that does bring it back to me.
Okay.
I would be saying, wow, this looks like it's really hard for you.
Okay.
Do you see the distinction?
Not really.
No. Okay. I'm not going to say, wow, I'm sorry this is so hard for you, because then I'm bringing it back to myself.
Oh, when you say, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh.
But if I'm saying, wow, this looks like it's really hard for you,
Okay.
then think about, like, if you were in those shoes and you were saying whatever was hard for you, and then someone says, wow, it looks like this is really hard for you, that it more likely is going to feel like, oh, okay, they're getting it. They're not trying to refute me or help me see something different. They're just acknowledging what's happening for me. Does that make sense?
I think Terry's trying to distinguish, though.
What? What I
It
missed?
sounded like you're saying acknowledging their feelings rather than if the situation really is hard, you acknowledge
Oh.
that too?
Is that what
Like-
you're saying? Okay,
Like,
thank
that
you.
really stinks.
Something more objective. than
Okay.
just, oh, you must feel bad.
Right.
Oh, no, that situation really sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're a millennial. Well, and that goes back to what you were saying, about, just that empathy and sympathy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because sometimes you don't want someone. Oh, wow. I guess that's really hard for you. Like it's kind of like, oh, that's
For you.
That's your problem.
That's like
That's
your
big
problem.
deal.
In the similar situation, I'd be handling this. I don't.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
that's kind of
It's
where I'm
kind
at.
of
But
like.
I'm super sensitive.
Well, it's almost
Just
like
like-
the person's overreacting to the situation as opposed to
Like-
acknowledging that the circumstances of the situation might
Really
be
are hard.
worse.
Would be hard for anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's difficult about this is we're not the ones speaking in the midst of that situation, and so I think it's harder to comprehend that in that situation, if you really are hurting and someone's saying, "Wow, this is really hard for you," that it's really gonna do the right brain connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we also want to make sure that we're not putting the focus on the situation and taking it off of their feelings?
Well, that's a good distinction. I think what you're doing is you're trying to meet them where they are in terms of how they're experiencing the situation, and then they're gonna kind of let you know if they're ready to move into talking about the situation itself, and that's going to be probably with a little bit more focus potentially on kind of problem solving or working on how you're going to navigate through. Does that make sense? You want to start with where the person is, and that's what this is doing, and you're following them. So for me as a counselor, this is so wonderful because as a counselor, part of me thinks, oh, I'm supposed to have answers, I'm supposed to have the right questions, but I don't have to do any of that at this stage anyway, because I'm following what the other person is saying. And so often, you guys know, people's life circumstances, I can never make up the things that people tell me about. And so if I'm too quick to jump in to say kind of what they should do or what they could do, then I probably missed some pretty big pieces. And so this allows you to gain more accurate awareness and knowledge of what really is happening. Does that make sense?
Sandy, I don't mean it as a rule, but in general, would you say then, be careful to use statements that have the pronoun I in them?
Yes.
Okay.
Be careful not to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Be careful not to use I, right.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Hey, nice to see you.
I'm sorry, let me get a shot. Arriving, okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Thank you, Andrew.
Mhm, sure.
I appreciate that.
Okay. So let me also say then, one of the reasons why this is so foundational, and we have spent a lot of time on it, not just today, is because it is what helps to build relationship. It helps you to gain credibility with someone, because a lot of the Isaiah 58 ministries, we're not necessarily in similar shoes with the people that you're trying to serve. And so by taking the time to really connect with where the person is, and for them to feel like you're really working at engaging with them where they are and understanding whatever it is that they might be speaking about, then you're gaining credibility with them. And that helps to build the relationship.
And I think giving time for the conversation.
Yeah.
And for them to know that you're kind of stoking with them in this bad place for a few minutes is affirming. And also, I mean, it takes time to build relationships. There you
Yeah.
go. Okay.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah. And silence is hard for people, especially in our culture. But you can just kind of sit with people, because I'll use this and they'll just kind of sit there for a little bit. And sometimes I might take guesses at what's going on and then give them some words. But I let people kind of sit for a little while too, just not so it's uncomfortable, but so that I'm not jumping in and kind of taking away from what they might. I think about Job. The best thing those friends did was sit quietly for 7 days.
Right. I love that.
Yes.
I don't know, I might be overthinking it, but in your experience, I would wonder if some people might feel manipulated or patronized.
Oh, you are spot on. There are some people, one person standing, who, that is exactly the case, that he was so alert to what I was doing that I was doing naturally. And he was so alert to it that he just said, "Why are you repeating everything I'm saying?" That was in the early days. So,
I've been better trained since then.
I've experienced that.
The feeling?
Well,
or-
my brother is a counselor, and I always feel like, get out of counselor mode with me and just talk to me.
because you're wanting.
Because he's always like, well, it sounds like you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, just have a normal conversation with me, please.
Even if the goal isn't to give feedback, sometimes that makes the conversation sound more natural. Because if it breaks the pattern
Yeah.
of just the reflective and the passive, and it shows almost more buy-in. And even if they're not there specifically with those answers, it's another thing that seems to show that people are engaged, because that's so typical with conversations.
To be giving your input?
And it makes it more natural and takes it, because my kid brother does the same thing, and I love him.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it a whole life of active listening isn't a suggestion, right? I mean, it's a tool. At some point, the
Yeah.
relationship has other facets.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yes.
And this is for times of extreme trauma, right?
Well, it doesn't have to be extreme trauma. It could be, minor, but just upsetness, even. And it's not going to be all you do, so.
Right, there's a particular goal that you have in active
That's
listening.
right.
That's not the way you're always talking
That's right.
to
Yeah.
someone you're trying to connect with.
Yeah. Yeah. So usually I'm using this with clients. I'm using it early on, especially like in the first several sessions, and I'm also using it as a check-in. If I say something, some pearl of wisdom I give them, and they have a blank look, then I go back into my active listening to kind of see if what I missed and what might be going on for them. So, yeah, no, it's a tool. It's a really foundational, important tool, and it's one in a spectrum of tools. Yeah.
So, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Wait, how are you?
Well, I'm pretty frustrated right now. I can't get anything done with my kid at school. His teachers are calling me saying he's disruptive, but he's also not doing his work, and they won't meet with me. Teachers won't, or they don't have the time. to work this out, and I don't know what I'm going to do with this because it's just going nowhere.
So you're frustrated with the teachers?
Yeah, but I've got a lot of frustrations because I'm frustrated with my kid too.
Your darling kid?
This is hypothetical, so it's not any child you know. I'm channeling my experience as a teacher, not as a parent.
Oh, I see. You're frustrated with your child for the disruptions or the problem that it causes?
Yeah, I don't think he likes schools right so much, he's acting out, and he's not stopping, and it's just, it's like, why can't he stop?
So he's not liking school, and he's not stopping, and there's also frustrations with the school.
Yeah, the school, I don't know what they got in terms of responding to behavior stuff. I mean, he likes to tell jokes and draw attention. I mean, who doesn't? I was like that too, so it's like a chip off the old block, you know what I mean? So, but, I don't know what sometimes it seems like I'm getting this call like, oh, I made him go wait in the hall. Sometimes he's lunch detention. Oh, could you talk to the principal? I was like, I don't know what they're doing, and everybody's doing something different. And I ask him to explain, and he doesn't know what in the world he's talking about. He doesn't make any sense to me. I can't figure out from him. He doesn't tell me.
And so you don't get it from him, and you're not getting any clarity from the school.
No, I don't know what's going on.
And so then you're feeling powerless.
Well, I don't know what to do. Is that what powerless is? I don't know what to do.
Yeah. But you want something to change. But
Yeah, I want him to not get in trouble.
Okay. And so the things you tried toward that end.
Yeah, I took away his Xbox, and I told him his friends couldn't come over, and all these things, and he just keeps doing it, and he just doesn't listen to me.
And so there's kind of a break in relationship.
We have a good time. We were playing Xbox together the other day, and not true. We don't have an Xbox. And we're having a good time. Then I beat him in Halo 4, but but otherwise he's like, yeah. Like if I want him to talk to him about doing right in school, then he just gets mad. He just just turns away, and he kind of just doesn't listen. I can tell he's not listening.
So it's kind of multi-level stuff with him, and then exacerbated by stuff at the school.
What's exacerbated?
Kind of made worse.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know which makes which worse, but I don't know I can't figure out what to do because it seems like he's the problem.
So you've tried doing stuff with him and stuff with the school, but they haven't responded, or?
Yeah, well, I don't know what they want me to do. And say they'll call me and they say these things, but I think, what am I supposed to do? He has lunch detention. Am I supposed to do something?
So they're just giving you information, but not about what's happening, but not giving you opportunity to try to problem solve?
Yeah. Well, I ask him about it, and then he doesn't want to talk about it. Yeah, I had lunch detention. I can't tell. He's okay with the concept. Oh, well, I made a joke and I got a lot of attention, which I like, and okay, I got lunch detention. Okay, it's okay. He doesn't mind, but they keep bugging me about he's got lunch detention, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
So when they let you know he has lunch detention, you're not able to say, hey, can we talk about what's going on here, or I'm not really liking this pattern, or?
Oh, I didn't know what to say. I thought I was just supposed to do something.
Okay.
I didn't. I asked to meet once, and they said, "Well, tell us when you could." And I haven't figured out a time I can meet him yet. So they asked that, but we haven't set it up yet.
Okay. So right now you're kind of in limbo.
Yeah, I guess.
With a lot of uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I mean, he's in middle school. I've spent some time in middle school, been in 8th grade for 13 years. This is what boys are like, aren't they? Sometimes they get kind of, wild.
Yeah, they can be. And so you're feeling frustrated, though, because you recognize that, and maybe it sounds like you're thinking that the school's not recognizing that as well.
Maybe, I don't know. I think there's this one teacher who doesn't like him. The emails always sound kind of snarky.
Snarky to you, or snarky about your son?
Both.
And so then you have feelings toward that teacher.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really want, I don't know what to do, and so I don't want to talk to them because I don't like, I think I want to do something. You know, I mean, I'm assuming they prefer he not do this stuff,
Yeah.
you know, and I can't make him not do it.
Yeah.
And I think they think I can, you know.
Because they say that to you, or because you're inferring that from what they're saying, or?
I don't know. I guess probably I'm just thinking, I just feel that maybe I feel guilty or I feel that pressure. But, you know, I tell him what he should do, and, you know, he does what he wants. He's like people that way, so, you know.
So I wonder if pursuing some kind of clarity with the school might be helpful, or is that something?
Yeah, that might be. Yeah, it might be.
And yet moving forward toward that, it's been difficult for you to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I could ask that one 8th grade English teacher. I like him a lot. So, yeah, I should ask, try to get that clarity and then see if there's somewhere to go.
Okay. So we can, if you want, we can talk about maybe some ways to pursue that clarity.
I'm good, I think.
Okay, all right.
Aren't I?
You're great.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions about any of that? Yes, Mary.
Really liked when you said, sounds like you feel powerless,
Mm.
because he kept saying that, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And you really got it, but I don't know if that helped him or not.
I don't know. In that role, did it help, Andrew?
Yeah, it helps. I guess one thing, I mean, I've heard this for years from Sandy, so I'm guessing it already, but it helps, and I do think this about middle school a lot, you know, we can't necessarily solve, we sit down and talk for a while, one more lunch detention and Billy will, you know, straighten up. It's like, no, you know, and I do feel powerless, but I also don't have complete power over the situation after all.
Mhm.
And so it did feel nice to have someone recognize that, yeah, there's a struggle with this and it's difficult to do. And there is clarity that's available, but it doesn't mean that if we sit down then we'll answer it. I mean, you didn't say that, but I was kind of guessing, yeah, clarity would be a nice step forward from there and see what was available.
So so part of what I was doing though is that if we can acknowledge, yeah, there's a sense of powerlessness, then that can give some direction, so then I can build on that, and then that's when I could say, so you're lacking clarity and you'd like clarity. And then we can talk about other ways to move forward toward that. So by acknowledging what might be going on, then that helps to direct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, I thought you were just asking a bunch of questions. I was like, wait, is this an example of what not to do? But then I reviewed my notes. And I noticed that your questions, you know, were either parroting, which is the statement with the question, and so on. And so I was like, wow, that really is working. Draw out information.
Thank you, dear. I asked one question.
At the
in all
end,
that.
yeah, I was gonna say,
did.
it sounded
Yeah.
like you were moving into problem solving
Yeah.
at the end.
Yeah. I could have done it differently, but I
Well,
just slipped.
you moved into problem solving,
Oh.
it felt natural.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'd gotten to a point where there were steps that were available, and if I had reacted badly to that question, you would have pulled back from it.
Mhm. Yeah.
By the way, I also asked questions hoping she'd answer. And
I can tell this was a little bit of an actual session.
Well, did you notice I asked a question?
Yes.
I was hoping she'd answer and she didn't. Did anybody notice that? Did you notice that?
Oh, yeah, I noticed it. And I actually did answer it a little bit.
Well,
And
yeah,
then turned it around.
Not the way I wanted you to answer.
Oh, I see.
What question was it?
Yeah, what did you?
Well,
About eighth grade, or middle school boys.
Oh.
yeah,
Is that the one?
Right.
Yeah.
And I also at one point said, what should I do?
Oh.
I was waiting for you to ask that. What do you think I should do?
I'm too well trained by her to know I'm not gonna get that.
So if he had, I would have said, well, I wonder if you have any ideas
Right.
of where to start.
Oh, you would have put it back on him.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering, because
Yeah.
if someone, it seems like at that point, they're inviting you
Yeah.
to give.
Yeah.
But I know good therapists don't give a lot of answers.
It's actually an ethical dilemma for me because you're not supposed to.
Right, right.
No, I would start there because so often, and this is actually just kind of in general, a really good starting place for almost anything is to find out what have you tried in the past and how has it worked, because people have tried stuff.
Right.
And so I think then you can build on. That way you're not starting at ground zero. You're just being able to build on. And you can hear what's been frustrating about whatever they've tried in the past or but no, I don't. At that point I wouldn't have given answers because people don't want to really hear them actually.
So, by way of wrapping up, would you give us another restatement? I think that I always find the hardest part of this is, in fact, that we are not privileged to give the answer that solves the problem. And so you ought to do this, knowing as we lead into the stuff next, with the sort of content-specific things. I certainly know what would be a good thing to do if you were me.
Yeah.
Or you were I. So could you give us as our last, before we stop, how important is that to make sure you're avoiding the sensation of trying to solve problems?
Well, I
Or
think
evaluate or even label problems.
yeah, it's so subtle because somebody really might be wanting answers, and so sometimes you could say, well, it's important because you don't live their life, and I mean, I can tell you, I've given great pearls to many people, and they'll come back the next week and say, oh, I didn't do what you said. What? And I've learned, I mean, I'm joking. People have other factors that they're considering that I'm not privy to or isn't even clear in the moment. And I also think God is sovereign, and God, He's going to speak to everybody differently, and I might have my little pearls of wisdom in my office, and the Holy Spirit is much more effective than all that I can say. And so that's part of it, is recognizing our own limits, and we've talked about that a little bit before, that we're limited in terms of what we're doing. And even in that situation or others, I might say, so I do have some ideas, and I wonder, would you like to hear any of my thoughts about, moving, possibilities for what you could do? So I'm inviting or asking permission to move into that if I do that. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a little different. In my office, people are coming for my input. In the stuff like Isaiah 58, they're not coming to you in the same capacity, and so that's one of the. I think it's more trickier because you at one and the same time you might be you're in this position of kind of serving, and so you've, for lack of a better word, you're kind of one up on who you might be serving, and yet in that capacity you're also at the same, you're building relationship kind of at the same level, and you're kind of peers, and so I think it's a tricky balance in how to navigate through that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So that's where but and at the same time you're kind of, what you're doing with this is you're always kind of watching to see how are they responding to what we're talking about, or what I'm saying, or kind of where this is going. Yeah.
I found with a broken person, someone that's really broken, you need to give them all the dignity You
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
You cannot say, you should do this, you should do this. That totally, they just reject that
Yeah.
out of hand.
Yeah.
You just say, is it okay with you if this?
Yeah.
You know, every little thing, I mean it. Is it okay if we get coffee right now? Would you like that? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
just every step of the way, you grant them that dignity to make a decision.
Yeah. No, I love that. Dignity is a great word. Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. Okay.